Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, 888-589-8840. Number to call, 888-589-8840. Here's Chris Rock. Rob, we can grab clip number one. Here's Chris Rock, the comedian, speaking yesterday in support of President Obama. And I'd love to get your reaction to Chris Rock referring to President Obama as our boss and our dad. Let's listen.
I am just here to support the President of the United States. The President of the United States is, our boss. But he's also, the President and the First Lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen. And when you don't, it usually bites you later on.
So I'm here to support the President. So that's Chris Rock. President Obama is our boss. He is also the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen. And when you don't, it usually bites you in the beep later on. And that part is certainly correct. President Obama, I believe, has a way of going after his political enemies, those that don't listen to him, those that don't kowtow to him, those that don't capitulate. He has a way of getting even with them using the considerable powers of his office. 888-589-8840. A story here today, by the way, before we go to the phones, from Newtown, where a Lutheran pastor, has actually been reprimanded by his denomination, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, for participating in an interfaith prayer vigil. And I think his denomination was right in doing this. This was an interfaith prayer service. There were Jewish, Muslim, and other religious traditions that were represented. President Obama was there. The governor of Connecticut was there. And this pastor participated in it. And prayers were offered to the various gods of these various faiths. And I think he's since apologized for doing it. And I think his denomination was right to rebuke him for this, because this is exactly what Paul is talking about in 2 Corinthians 6, at the end of 2 Corinthians 6, when he talks about not being unequally yoked with unbelievers. He's not primarily talking there about business. He's not talking about marriage, although a lot of people apply it that way. He is talking about engaging in joint worship with counterfeit versions of spirituality, engaging in joint worship with those who worship and serve a different God. He says, what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? What portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? We, he says, are the temple of the living God. Therefore, he says, cleanse ourselves. Let us cleanse ourselves from every defilement of body and spirit, bringing holiness to completion in the fear of God. So I think those that worship the true and living God, I believe if we're going to obey the scriptures in 2 Corinthians 6, then we would have to decline an invitation to take part in a joint interfaith prayer service that would involve prayers and worship to counterfeit gods. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to David, Chesterfield, Virginia. David, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian. Thank you for taking my call, and
Yes,
I
sir.
really enjoy your show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, comment about the prayer breakfast. All right, what President Obama says, I mean, I'm just not shocked by anything he says, but what was amazing, now, I don't have the right name or where this gentleman works at, but he was at the breakfast.
Now, were you there yourself?
No, I wasn't there.
Okay.
But I heard about this.
Okay, go ahead.
No, sir. But anyway, he was I want to say Johns Hopkins Hospital, and he was a doctor there, or
Yeah, that's Dr. Benjamin Carson. He's a world-renowned pediatric neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins. You're exactly right.
Okay, he was there, and he looked President Obama in the eyes and said, he was saying something. Now, I might paraphrase a little, but I would like you to comment, because I don't know that I have all my facts straight. But he said that all of this health care that Obama's trying to do, he said all we have to do is when a child is born, an infant, give him a birth certificate and give him an account and let that and just put into it from the time he's born until the time he dies, put money in it, and then he or she can pay their own health care. That way you can stay on top of it, and if there's any left, you pass it to your heirs as part of your estate. I mean, to me, that would be a great idea, and it took him all of a couple of minutes to say that. And everything we've been, going on with health care over the years, I mean, what do you think about that idea?
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your call, David, and I'm looking at a story. I don't have the whole story in front of me, but this Benjamin S. Carson, he is a strong believer, staunch believer. In fact, he was openly critical of a number of the policies that President Obama has advocated, critical of those policies at this prayer breakfast. And he talked about the fundamental problem in America being the moral decay and the fiscal irresponsibility. That's where the ultimate issues are to be found. That's where the ultimate healing of America has to begin, with doing something about this moral decay. He referred to Rome as a powerful empire that crumbled from within, that destroyed itself from within. And Carson's point was that we are in danger of doing the very same thing. So he was quite bold right in front of President Obama. He complained about political correctness and how it's a horrible thing, how it is dangerous because it impedes freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and exchanges of ideas. And he's an African American, so virtually impervious, therefore, to any kind of criticism. Well, listen, I appreciate the call. Let's go to Josh in Mobile, Alabama. Josh, you're on Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hello?
Yes, Josh, go right ahead. You're on Focal Point.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, it's been a hard week trying to get into you. The phone banks have been so tied up.
Well, I'm glad you made it through.
Well, I don't really care to talk about Obama. What I'd like to talk about was the issue with the Boy Scouts.
Yes, sir.
And how they've kind of tried to skirt around it. The reason my personal belief is that they tried to go around, or they put it off so that they are hoping that it'll fall below the radar, and then maybe they can vote on it that way.
Well, and now it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think, from the people in scouting I've talked to, this vote at the National Council in May, and we're not letting up. We're putting the pedal to the metal on this. We're going to try to get the names of those 1,400 members of the National Council that are going to be making the decisive vote in May, and we're going to try to communicate with them. We're going to try to contact them. We're going to keep the pressure up, keep the pressure on this CEO at AT&T who's pushing the sodomy-based agenda into the Boy Scouts to pressure him to step down, pressure him to resign. So we're not going to let up. But the reality is this National Council that'll vote in May, they're far more conservative than the executive board. So when the executive board passed the ball to them, I think it was the executive board's way of accepting reality that this policy is very unlikely to be overturned, because I think the National Council will vote, and I predict overwhelmingly, to preserve the policy that prohibits homosexuals from serving in the Scouts.
Right. That's just my point exactly. Why in the world can we conservatives not apply the same principles that the radical left it does? When they can't get something through the Supreme Court, then they go to your pocketbook. We need to just tell AT&T, because I've already called my AT&T service, and I told them if this happens, I'm going to another provider.
Mm-hmm.
So, why don't we hit them in the pocketbook the same way they do us?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's smart thinking. Jesus one time talked about the fact that the sons of this age are more shrewd than the sons of light. They know how to play hard cheese, and we don't want to do anything that's immoral, obviously, or underhanded or deceptive. We're not talking about that. But you talk about being masculine, assertive, right up front, bold, courageous. Those are the things that we need to do. And Jesus, told us, I want you to be as shrewd as serpents, but as innocent as doves. So be sure that you don't compromise righteousness, you don't compromise character, you don't compromise integrity, but be smart, be shrewd.
Exactly.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much
Yes, sir.
for that. All right, Josh, thank you. Let's go to Tony in Richmond, Virginia. Tony, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I just want to make a comment about the president and his little cliches about the nail-scarred hands and all. He's very deceptive, and we as Christians, the Bible tells us to judge them by their fruit. This guy, president, and I'm respecting his office because that's who he is, he's against everything that we stand for Christ. I mean, he's for same-sex marriage. God has not wrote a new Bible on that. He's against killing babies. God has formed babies while they were in their mother's womb. And we as Christians, and I'm a black African-American, this guy is so deceptive, and even dealing with the churches, some black churches compromise just to get him in the office, just to say that we have a black president. Look, God, he has to repent before the nations for continually allowing these babies to be killed. He has to openly repent because he's openly said he's for abortion. He's openly saying that he's for homosexuality marriages. He has to repent. I'm praying that God continues to hold back his judgment on us because this guy, only thing he's doing is reaping the whirlwind on his daughters.
Mm-hmm. Well, in reality, even beyond that, and I appreciate your call, Tony. Thank you for that. And even beyond that, the harm that this does to our country. I mean, you cannot read the history of the ancient kingdoms of Judah and Israel without realizing the enormous impact by example and model and policy that political leaders have over the fate and destiny of entire kingdoms, entire nations, entire empires. And so, a fish rots first from the head, and when you have decay, moral decay coming from the top political office in the land, that has ramifications for the entire country and its future. Focal Point AFR Talk, back after the news.